This is TWiT.
Hey, speaking of fantasy, how about this one? President Trump says Apple better start making its phones in the United States or else. He says he'll apply a 25% tariff just to the iPhone. if just to the iPhone, if Apple doesn't start making the iPhone in the United States, he actually kind of threatened Tim Apple with this one, but I think he's fairly serious. Then somebody pointed out, well, there's other companies. He said, well, also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. Okay.
Here's one. There's a big glaring problem. He's trying to push everybody around and force Apple to make the iPhone in the U.S. so he can brag about that. The problem is that the 25% tariff would be much cheaper than an iPhone that was made in the United States.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because the goal is laudable. Let's.
Why?
Well, I mean, you could say we should bring manufacturing back to the United States, but I think a lot of people have pointed out no American wants the job of assembling an iPhone. It is a low-paying, grueling, difficult, long-houred job. So that's part of the problem. This is a very good piece. So Trip Mickle published a piece in the New York Times, Is Trump's Made in America iPhone a Fantasy? Which kind of did a both-sidism treatment of this, treating it as if it were, well, possible. Some analysts say it'd be possible, but it'd cost $2,000, to which I love this. Our friend over at Daring Fireball, John Gruber, wrote, idiocy or jackassery, you make the call. He's not talking about the president. He's talking about Trip Mickle. He said the answer should simply be yes, it's sheer fantasy. And you made the exact point that Gruber did too. It's not merely the 25% tariff. In order to make the iPhone more expensive to ship in than make in the U.S., you'd have to have a 200% tariff.
There are two glaring problems with this whole idea. One is that, the people who don't understand how the world works, like Donald Trump, don't appreciate the fact that the U.S. has it made in terms of the balance of trade. The U.S. does all the high-paying consulting type gigs, the financial services.
We design the iPhone. That's do all the good job.
Exactly. And then other countries have child labor and
they get the grunt work. Yeah.
To produce for us these relatively affordable gadgets, which are amazing. And there's a lot of ugliness there. There are environmental problems. There are human rights problems in the manufacturing, all that stuff. But in terms of pure self-interest, we had it made. We have it made. And he wants to dismantle that and bring the sweatshops to the United States, tripling the price of the iPhone so nobody can afford it. Like, what kind of plan is this? He just doesn't understand how good we've got it, and it's just it's awful. And the other problem that he doesn't understand is he's systematically dismantling the soft power that prevents us from going to war with our rivals. If you're totally enmeshed with a country like China economically, their incentive to go to war against us is much lower. If you sever those connections, then, well, might as well just invade Taiwan and let's bring on the World War III. So it's really dumb. He just doesn't understand international relations. He doesn't understand the history of alliances and tariffs, and he doesn't understand how the world economy works. It's awful.
It kind of puts Apple over a barrel, but I don't think they have any choice but to, if he does charge a specific tariff to Apple's iPhones, which seems illegal, by the way.
Leo, well, I said that on my show. I was like, is there even a law that allows
I don't know how you do this.
To tax an internal, a domestic company or a tariff? Okay. But the game theory on this is so difficult because, like, let's say Apple was like, you know what, you're right, President Trump, let's bring all these factories over here. That would take a decade.
Right.
So what does that even mean? So like when finally all of the iPhones sold in America are made in America, That's a decade from now. Some of us will be dead. But then,
Don't look at me when you say that, would you? I mean, I know it's true.
I was looking over in the horizon.
How about he can't even make his red hats in the United States?
Yeah, isn't that funny? They're made in China. Yeah.
The game theory I'm thinking about is also like, if you're Apple, right? No one can do this in any reasonable way because, let's say whatever he said something about tariffs for Europe. April
50% tariff on the European Union that goes into effect June 1st.
Between now and then,
2 weeks.
Between now and then,
not even 2 weeks, 1 week.
So the point is like, you can't game theory this out because there's no way to know what will happen. We know that Tim Cook met with him last week, right?
He said this the day after he met with Tim Cook.
Right. Okay.
And he has said several times, for instance, when he was in Saudi Arabia, he's been gunning for Apple. He said it was in Saudi Arabia. He looked at Jensen Huang. He said, NVIDIA's here. Tim Cook's not. He said, Tim Cook has promised to bring iPhone manufacturing to the United States, which I'm sure Cook never promised. Cook is in a very difficult position. He gave $1 million out of his personal money to Trump for the inaugural. That wasn't enough. Is there any way out for Apple on this, and really, by the way, it's not Apple, just Apple, because what's Apple going to do? They're going to pass as much of this on to us, which is not good for their business. But what else are they going to do?
But even if Apple, so the Occam's razor thing is Tim Cook goes to the White House and does a press conference and says, we're going to
build the plants.
Yeah. In 10 years, $500 billion, whatever.
That's what it'll say. Yeah.
That's what'll happen. And that's what'll work. Or also, it doesn't matter. Like, you saw all of the other countries sort of wait out the tariff thing. So the thing that, when I say that it's impossible to game theory this out, it's, you don't know, even if you give a pound of flesh or whatever, or do the sort of make an announcement and go to the White House and have a press conference or whatever. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in 3 weeks or 6 months or whatever. So what's the point of doing anything when it comes to these threats?
I'm old fashioned. I think that if you bribe a corrupt official with $1 million, you should get something in return.
I believe it.
Just me,
believe it.
But
Which makes you wonder what the Qataris are going to get for their $400 million jet, but never mind. Go ahead, Jennifer.
But Brian, I think your 10-year prediction is a little optimistic. I mean, it's not feasible to make iPhones in the country.
Right.
I mean, there just is. The infrastructure would take a very long time.
More than 10 years.
Isn't Brian saying you have to pretend like you're going to do it until
that's what he's saying.
That is what I'm saying.
It's all about
because
face.
It's just right. It's put on the show. Pretend. Wait until everything changes in 6 minutes, not 6 months, because who knows what's going to happen next? Who's he going to turn his attention to? But the other thing is, we've seen a lot of companies, and in the smart home space, which I cover, with the first round of tariffs, a lot of companies did move their manufacturing out of China, moved to Vietnam and to other countries.
That's what Tim's doing. In fact, that's what Trump said. He said he's building all these plants all over India. I don't want him building plants in India.
India's
That's what he
democracy.
said, literally.
That's a problem.
So it's not. In fact, I think the worst thing you can do, and this is, I think, where it really went south. Apple said the tariffs cost us $900 million. And remember what happened with Walmart when they said, we're going to have to raise prices because of the tariffs. Remember what happened to Amazon when the rumor was that they were going to start putting the amount paid to a tariffs in the pricing. Car manufacturers are going to put it on the sticker. That is the sin.
Yeah, Trump said, just let him eat tariffs.
Right. He doesn't want that to be clear to the American people what the tariffs are costing them. So when Apple says this cost us almost $1 billion, I think that was the sin. And that's when Trump got upset. Now, how do you, but more to the point, this is politics. The real question is, what does Apple do?
Well, but also they had to say that because that was in an earnings report. Like, you have,
they can't deny it.
Yeah.
But you can do what some other companies have done. Microsoft raised its Xbox prices without, by the way, not the way they got around it is they didn't just raise them in the US, they raised them everywhere. See, it's not the tariffs. We're just going to raise it everywhere. and which has, it's a win-win because we make more money.
Yeah.
And the president doesn't get mad at us.
It's sucking up to the president and greedflation.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's perfect.
You people in the UK are paying $200 more for the Xbox because of our tariffs.
Has anyone done the math in terms of, since we know Apple has more money than God, like what if they did have to
they could just
the tariffs?
Yeah.
Right. But like what's the math on that and for how long?
I could give you back of the napkin math because we know that their profit margin is more than 40%. So they could eat a 25% tariff. And their profit margin go down to 15% or 30 or 10%.
And then how does Wall Street feel about that? Well, if Wall Street is intelligent, they know what the shot is here.
Well, they already, by the way, after the president's announcement, they already hit Apple's stock by, I think, 3%. So Wall Street knows. And I think Wall Street's smart enough to do what we just did, which is say, well, that's not going to happen. Apple's going to have to do something. I think maybe they split the difference because they do have a lot of margin, right?
But that's not going to get Trump what he wants, though, is it? So isn't he just going to keep pushing the number up like he did with, the initial trade war with China? I mean, are we going to get to 140% import?
This has to be keeping Tim Cook up at night.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't, we've got to meet this challenge and then we'll be okay. This is, okay, what's going to be the next challenge? How do we fit into this business model and ever-changing goalposts that we're going to, ultimately...
During his remarks on Friday, Trump warned companies against passing costs of tariffs off to their customers. I don't want the consumer to pay, he told reporters. Really puts Apple in...
Who's going to pay?
Who's going to pay? China. Everybody knows China's going to pay.
China's paying the tariffs.
But I think, the advantage Apple has is that Apple is way smarter than Trump, and they have got to know that what all Trump really wants is credit for something.
That's why
they want the credit for forcing Apple to do something it didn't want to do. So they just need to manufacture a press conference or a situation.
They've done it before.
Yeah.
They remember in his last term, Tim Cook gave a tour of the Texas facility, implying that this was here
where
because
we make
Trump.
Everything.
It'd been there for years, and it only made Mac Pros. Didn't matter. Right. It worked.
Our most powerful computer that has 10,000 customers. But never mind.
I feel like, though, this stuff works less well than it used to, because I think the president has people telling him, that was just lip service. Right. Remember Foxconn's Wisconsin plant, which they still haven't broken ground on. This has been going on for a while, but I think you won't hear me say this often. I think Trump is wised up. he's on to us. So this is a tough one, not just for Apple, maybe for Samsung, maybe for every consumer goods manufacturer in the country, maybe for all those robot vacuums you review, Jennifer.
The one I reviewed last week went up $1,000 from one week to the next because of they said because of the tariffs, but they're a Chinese company, so they don't get yelled at by Trump. But yes, the Roborock vacuum was, when it was announced, it was $1,899, and then when they shipped it or launched so you could buy it, it was $2,600.
That seems a little bit more than I'd be willing to pay for.
This does have an arm.
This is the one that scared your dog. Hey, thank you for watching this little snippet from our big show, the News Roundtable, This Week in Tech. I'm Leo Laporte. Each week we cover the week's tech news, in-depth analysis, but it's also fun and engaging. You'll find it at twit.tv along with all of our shows. And if you want more, just hit the subscribe button, and we'll be sure to bring you a lot more great content. Thanks for listening.